The silence shattered like broken glass. They took everything from me. The words tore out of Mia Hartley before she could stop them, her voice breaking in the candlelit back booth of Castellano's upscale Italian restaurant at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night when the howling blizzard outside had reduced Las Vegas to a frozen ghost town. Snow batters the windows with sounds like thrown sand, each gust arriving in waves. The candle flame shivers and dances and nearly dies, and Mia's hand shakes so violently that the crumpled bills scatter across the white tablecloth like the last pieces of a shattered life. $34. She has counted them 6 times. Across from her sits a man whose shadow falls across the table like a blade wrapped in ice. Nicholas Castellano. 6 foot 2 inches tall, broad shoulders filling a black suit tailored to perfection, dark hair silvered at the temples, and a scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone like a map of a violence she cannot comprehend. His cufflinks are gold. His watch costs more than her rent. His eyes are the color of a storm seconds before it breaks. And those eyes are locked on her face. "I know," he says, and his voice cracks on those 2 words like thin ice under weight. To his left sits Bruno, a man with a broken nose and shoulders like a linebacker, his suit impeccably black, his hands folded on the table. To his right sits Nino, younger, with slicked-back dark hair and eyes that miss nothing. Both men have frozen. Their hands have stopped moving. Their breathing has stopped. In 15 years of working for Nicholas Castellano, they have never seen him reach across a table toward a woman like this, his hand trembling, his jaw trembling, his eyes glistening with something neither man has ever witnessed. Weakness. The eviction notice lies crumpled beside the scatter of bills. $85,000. 7 days. Or she and her 2 children lose everything they have left, which is almost nothing. Mia pulls her hand away from his. She does not know who he is. Not really. She works this restaurant for nights a week, takes the orders, brings the pasta, clears the plates, and she has learned to not look at the men in the back booth. She has learned to not listen to the conversations that stop when she approaches. She has learned to pretend that the black SUVs outside belong to someone else's nightmare. But tonight her daughter Emma will not stop coughing. Tonight the notice came. Tonight Mia Hartley reached the end of her rope, and when this man looked at her with those storm-grey eyes and asked if she was all right, something inside her broke like bone. "What is this?" Nicholas asks, and his voice is no longer the voice of a man giving orders. It is the voice of someone trying to hold himself together. She slides the notice toward him with one shaking finger. The paper is worn where she has folded it and refolded it, worn where she has held it in her pocket next to her heart like a curse she cannot escape. The letterhead reads Property Management Services. The amount is printed in numbers so large they seem to scream. "My apartment," Mia whispers. The building was sold. The new owners are raising rent. They gave us 40 days, but I missed 3 months while Emma was sick and I was paying her hospital bills instead and she stops. She cannot continue. Speaking it aloud makes it real in a way that hoarding the notice has not. There is nowhere else. I have checked. Everything is too expensive. I work 2 jobs and I cannot afford a studio anywhere in the city. My ex-husband stopped paying child support. I have no family. I have no one. Bruno shifts in his seat. Nino looks away. Nicholas does not move. He reads the notice as though it is a letter written in a language he is slowly learning. The candlelight catches the gold of his wedding ring, a simple band worn smooth by time. His hands are large, scarred, capable of violence she cannot imagine. But right now they are gentle. "How many children?" he asks. 2. Emma is 6. Thomas is 8. Their names are Emma and Thomas, he repeats, and something in his chest rises and falls like he has been struck. And their mother is Mia. She nods because she cannot speak. "What happened to your ex-husband?" His voice is quiet now, dangerous in a different way than before. "He left 2 years ago. He said I was useless." She stops. She should not be telling this man anything. She should take her notice and her $34 and her shattered life and leave this restaurant and never come back. But she is so tired. She is so very tired. He said I was a failed investment. That is what he called me. A failed investment. The candle flame shivers. Outside, the snow continues to fall in sheets so thick the street has disappeared entirely. The city has disappeared. There is only this booth, this table, this moment where Mia Hartley sits across from a man who could own her entire life for the cost of his watch, and she has just told him the truth she tells no one. Nicholas reaches across the table. He does not touch her. He simply extends his hand, palm up, in a gesture of such vulnerability that Nino has to look away entirely. In 15 years of loyalty, Nino has never seen this man offer anything but commands and consequences. Nino has seen Nicholas Castellano order the disappearance of 3 men who threatened his empire. Nino has seen him sit in this very booth and decide fates with a single word. He has never seen him offer his hand to a waitress like he is asking her to trust him with her life. "Give me the notice," Nicholas says. Mia hesitates. Every instinct screams at her to protect this piece of paper, because protecting it means she has not yet lost. Once she gives it to him, it becomes real. Once she gives it to him, she has to believe something might change, and hope is a luxury she cannot afford. Hope is a blade that cuts. She slides it across the table. Nicholas reads it again, and something hardens in his face. The gentleness recedes. The scar on his cheekbone catches the candlelight and becomes something ancient and terrible. His jaw sets. His eyes become the color of the blizzard outside, gray and cold and bottomless. 7 days, he says. Yes. And you have $34. She does not ask how he knows the exact amount. She watched him count the crumpled bills. Of course he counted. Men like this count everything. They measure the world in dollars and debts and obligations that must be repaid. Yes, she confirms. Bruno shifts again. His hand moves slightly toward his jacket, a gesture so small most people would miss it. But Mia sees it, and her heart stops. She has entered a world she does not understand, and the rules of this world are not the rules of her world. In her world, people suffer quietly. In his world, people who cause suffering disappear. Who owns the building? Nicholas asks. I do not know. The notice came from a management company. I tried to call, but I just got transferred to different departments and no one could help You will not have to make any more calls, he says, and he stands up from the booth. He is taller standing than he was sitting. He is larger. He is the kind of large that makes other men step back. Bruno. Nino. We are leaving. He drops several $100 bills on the table. They flutter like injured birds. Mia stares at the money. It is more than she has seen in months. This is for you, Nicholas says. Not for the restaurant. For you. And you will give me your address. Why would you? Because 3 hours ago, my daughter Emma was pulled from beneath a car in a parking lot during this blizzard by a woman with kind eyes who stayed with her until I arrived. A woman who did not know who Emma was or who her father is. A woman who simply saw a child and could not walk away. He pauses. His voice becomes something else entirely, something that sounds like prayer and thunder combined. That woman was you, was it not? The restaurant tilts. The candle flame shivers one more time, and Mia understands that her life has just changed, though she does not yet know how or why or what it will cost her. Outside, the blizzard rages on, burying everything. For in the morning, and Mia Hartley sits alone under a single lamplight that casts everything in shades of amber and shadow. The studio apartment around her is so small that she can touch the kitchen wall from the bedroom doorway. In front of her, spread across the table like a blade slicing her life in half, is the eviction notice. $85,000. 7 days. The typewritten words blur and sharpen as she reads them again, though she has read them 17 times already. Back rent for 18 months. Property damage to the walls, damage that Douglas did when he kicked through the drywall 6 weeks ago, his boot leaving holes the size of his rage. Punitive fees. Attorney costs. The management company's itemized list of her failure, calculated down to the penny, demanding payment she will never possess in 7 lifetimes. Her hands shake as she pulls the money from her purse. A crumpled $5 bill. 3 ones. A handful of coins sticky from spilled coffee. She counts slowly, methodically, as if her hands have become accountants and the table has become a courtroom. $27. $29. $34 total. This is everything she owns that is not nailed down. In the bedroom through the open doorway, Marcus sleeps with his math textbook still open on his chest, the book she bought used for $40, money that should have gone to food, but her son needs to learn division and there is no other way. Next to him, Lily curls into a C-shape under a blanket with a hole near the hem. She is 6 years old and does not understand why other children have lunch money and she has a single apple to stretch across an entire school day. Rain hammers the window above the sink. The glass is old and warped, and the water runs down it in rivulets like tears, pooling in the sill where the wooden frame has started to rot. Mia counts the eviction notice again. 85,000. 7 days. The numbers do not change no matter how many times her lips form them. She opens the kitchen drawer and removes a small item wrapped in faded plastic. A prayer card, worn soft at the edges from her hands holding it on every bad day. The image on the front is the Virgin Mary, her hands reaching down toward the viewer. On the back, in flowing script, a single prayer: protect those without protection. Guide those without light. Hold fast to mercy when all else is taken. Mia's grandmother gave it to her, and her grandmother's mother gave it to her grandmother. It is the only thing of value she possesses that no creditor can take. She folds the eviction notice into smaller and smaller rectangles until it becomes a small square of paper. Then she stops, because the motion feels like accepting something. The rain continues. 3 hours until she must wake the children. 3 hours until she must become a mother again instead of a drowning woman. 6:15 in the morning, and Mia walks through Las Vegas streets that are still dark but beginning to surrender to gray. 47 blocks separate her studio apartment from Castellano's restaurant. She knows because she has counted them 1,000 times, and the counting helps her focus on the rhythm of her feet instead of the weight in her chest. The rain has softened into mist that clings to her hair and face. Her coat is 15 years old and originally belonged to a woman at the hospital where her mother died. The wool is thin in places and water soaks through. Her groceries are in a plastic bag from the convenience store on 5th Street, and the handles cut into her palm where she grips them too tightly. Inside the bag, coffee grounds, 2 cans of beans, a loaf of bread, milk that will last 3 days if the children are careful. She passes the police station on 7th Avenue. The lights inside are still on, the graveyard shift ending soon, the day shift arriving with their coffee and their paperwork and their easy certainty that the world is knowable and safe. 3 weeks ago, she walked these same steps at 3 in the morning. Douglas had been outside her apartment building. Not breaking in, he'd said when she called the police. Just standing on public property. Just thinking about her. Just wanting to talk. Officer Chen had come, had taken one look at Douglas with his expensive cologne and his charming smile and his father's money in his bank account, and decided that Mia was overreacting. He'd patted Douglas on the shoulder and told him to stop lingering, but with the tone of a friend advising a friend, not a police officer enforcing a law. Douglas's father knew the commissioner. Douglas drank whiskey with half the precinct. The calculation was simple: whose word mattered more, a wealthy man's apathy or a waitress's terror? Mia walks faster, but she does not run, because running would mean that she was afraid, and acknowledging fear might collapse the structure that keeps her standing. The restaurant is called Castellano's, and it occupies the corner of an expensive block where the buildings are old and made of stone that money has kept pristine. The interior smells like garlic and olive oil and the kind of wealth that does not shout but merely exists, certain of its own permanence. At 8 in the evening, the dinner service has reached its peak. The dining room is filled with the whisper of expensive fabrics, the soft clink of silver on china, the low voices of people who are used to being heard when they speak. The walls are the color of aged wine. The lighting is low and golden, designed to make shadows feel like intimacy. In the back booth, the one draped in burgundy velvet, the one set apart from all the others, Nicholas Castellano sits with his shoulders against the cushioned back, a glass of wine in one hand and a cigar waiting on the table beside him. He is 42 years old and looks like the kind of man who has learned to be comfortable with other people's discomfort. Dark suit tailored to move with him, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar to show the edge of his chest. A gold watch on his wrist, old and expensive and understated. A scar runs from his left eye to his cheekbone, thin and precise like someone drew it with a very sharp pencil. His eyes are the color of storm clouds before rain, and they miss nothing. Bruno and Nino sit across from him, their voices low and urgent. They speak about a shipment delayed at the port. Complications with paperwork. Someone named Carmine is being difficult about territory. Nicholas listens, and occasionally he nods, and the two men lean closer, hungry for his approval like animals waiting for a signal. Mia approaches the table with water glasses balanced on a tray. She is careful not to spill. She has become very good at not spilling. She is pouring water for Bruno when a voice at the bar rises above the careful quiet of the restaurant. A drunk businessman is arguing with the bartender about a drink. His voice cracks like lightning across the room. Mia's hand jumps. Water spills across the rim of the glass. She does not spill on Bruno's suit, only on the table. Only on her own hands. Only on herself, where the burning water does not matter because her hands are already calloused from 7 years of carrying hot plates, and calloused hands do not feel pain the same way other hands do. She says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll clean this immediately." And in that moment, across the table, Nicholas Castellano's eyes move from the drunk businessman to the waitress with the shaking hands. He watches how she flinches at the sound. How her body curves inward protectively. How she apologizes for something that is not her fault. He is 7 years old again, cowering in a corner of his father's apartment while his father's fist comes down. His mother is crying. The sound is like nothing he has ever heard before or since. His father says, "This is what happens when you make me angry." His father's knuckles are bleeding from where they connected with her face. 7-year-old Nicholas makes a vow in that corner, no child will suffer like this. Not on his watch. Not ever. He does not know yet that this vow will reshape his entire life. At that same hour, across the city in the opposite direction, Douglas Hale sits in a bar called the Crimson with a woman named Rachel Dawson. She is older than him by 8 years, wealthy in the way that old families are wealthy, not earned but inherited, not built but given. Her hair is the color of champagne. Her fingernails are long and perfectly manicured. She wears a diamond on her left ring finger that catches the light like a tiny blade. Douglas is explaining his problem. His voice is plaintive, wounded, the voice of a man who cannot understand why others will not simply do what he wants. She won't return my calls. She got a restraining order. Can you believe that? A restraining order. As if I am some kind of criminal. I was just trying to talk to her. I told her I loved her, and she acted like I was threatening her. Rachel sips a martini. Olive. Gin. A hint of vermouth. The drink of a woman whose tastes have been refined by decades of getting exactly what she wants. "How long were you together?" she asks. 8 months. But it should have been longer. She just wasn't ready for what we had. She was scared of it. Rachel leans back in her chair. "Do you know what your real problem is, Douglas?" "What?" "You believe that wanting something from someone means they have an obligation to give it to you. It doesn't work that way. Not in any world. Not with any woman." Douglas reaches for his drink. "I just want to make her understand that she belongs with me." Rachel sets down her martini. A small smile touches her face, like she has just solved an equation that has been bothering her. "I know someone." a waitress, works at that Italian restaurant on 5th. Her name is Mia. She used to date Douglas when they were in high school. They broke up badly. Very badly. She told everyone terrible things about him. Lies, mostly. He's been trying for years to apologize, to make peace, and she just won't listen. Douglas leans forward. That's exactly like my situation. Yes, Rachel says. It is. And do you know what my friend did? He made sure she could never get hired anywhere legitimate. Spread rumors. Told HR departments that she was mentally unstable. That she stole from her last employer. That she was dangerous. Within a month, no one would hire her. Within 3 months, she was desperate. Sometimes desperate women make very poor decisions. Douglas studies Rachel's face. You're saying I should. I'm saying that sometimes the world needs a little help understanding the right outcome. I'm saying that a woman like that, with nowhere to turn, becomes very vulnerable. Very willing to reconsider her life choices. Very open to the idea that maybe staying with someone, making him happy, is better than the alternative. The bar is dark. The other patrons are focused on their own conversations, their own problems. No one is listening. What would you need? Douglas asks. For your help. Rachel smiles. I want the same thing. I want someone to understand that she made a mistake rejecting me. Her name is Mia as well. Different woman, same solution. You help me, I help you. We both get what we want. Douglas raises his glass. To mistakes, he says. Rachel raises hers. To correcting them, she replies. Outside the bar, the Las Vegas night is warm and endless. The sky above the city glows orange from the light reflecting off the streets. No stars are visible. No one can see the conversations happening in the dark. No one is watching them plan. They are simply two people in a bar, making an arrangement that will tear a woman's life apart. The black SUV cut through the blizzard like a blade wrapped in ice, its headlights swallowed by snow that fell so thick you couldn't see beyond the hood. Nicholas Castellano sat in the back seat, his cashmere coat worth more than most people's monthly salary draped across his shoulders, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might shatter. Bruno gripped the steering wheel, and Nino's hands were balled into fists on his lap. They had been searching for 3 hours. 3 hours since the call came through that Emma hadn't been picked up from her friend's house, that her teacher had called when no one arrived, that a black sedan had been spotted near the school at dismissal time. A 6-year-old girl in a pink winter coat. His daughter. His only daughter. The light of a man who had spent 39 years building an empire out of blood and cruelty, learning early that the world took from you unless you took first. Then Bruno's phone rang. Boss, we found a car overturned in a parking lot at 5th and Main. Black ice. The windows are smashed out. There's blood on the snow. Nicholas didn't remember opening the door. Didn't remember running. The world narrowed to a single point, his child. The parking lot was chaos, emergency lights flashing red and blue across the white blanket of frozen ground, police officers moving in slow motion, and on the asphalt, a child's pink boot lying on its side like an abandoned prayer. Then a voice cut through the wind. She's safe. Your daughter is safe. A woman stood wrapped in a restaurant uniform, soaking wet, her hands bleeding into the snow. Her name was Mia Hartley, though Nicholas didn't know it yet. She was 27 but looked 40 from exhaustion, from years of counting pennies for bread the way he once had, from learning that the world was designed to crush people like her into invisible dust. She held Emma wrapped in her own coat, the child's face buried in her shoulder, whimpering but alive. Everything stopped. $34. That was what Mia Hartley had in her wallet as she stood at the bus stop on Thursday evening, waiting to go to her shift at Castellano's restaurant, the upscale Italian place where she'd worked for 2 years without the owner knowing her name. $34 in crumpled bills. She'd counted them for times that morning while her apartment was still dark, while her daughter slept on a mattress on the floor, while the eviction notice sat on the kitchen table like a predator waiting to strike. $85,000. That was what she owed in 7 days. The landlord had given her the papers 3 weeks ago, after Douglas Hale, her ex-boyfriend, the man who had made her life a breathing nightmare for 8 months, had broken in and destroyed everything. The walls, the furniture, her daughter's drawings. He'd left a message on the bathroom mirror in toothpaste, "You belong to me." The police had done nothing. The 2 officers she'd called knew Douglas from his construction business, knew him from the favors he'd done, from the money that had passed between his hands and theirs. When Mia tried to file a report, they'd laughed. "He said you stole from him," one officer had said, not bothering to hide his amusement. "He said you're unstable. Maybe you should just go back to him. Save yourself the trouble." Unstable. That's what Rachel Dawson had been telling every restaurant in Las Vegas. Rachel Dawson, who wanted Douglas for herself and saw Mia as the only obstacle standing between them. Rachel Dawson with her designer clothes and her trust fund and her complete inability to understand that some women didn't have the luxury of being wanted. Mia's shift started at 5 o'clock. She arrived at 4:33, as she always did, and clocked in at 4:51 to give herself time to arrange the napkins and fill the water pitchers. She was invisible, that was the gift and curse of her job. Men with money didn't see women like her. They saw their own reflections in the silver and crystal, their own importance in the candlelight. The wind picked up around 6. By 7, it had become a howling thing, and the news was saying schools were closing, roads were closing. This was a historic storm for Las Vegas, temperatures dropping to levels the city had never experienced. Mia thought about her daughter. Her mother was watching her, a neighbor who took $20 a day for childcare that Mia could barely afford. Her mother was safe. That mattered more than anything. At 9:45 p.m., as Mia left the restaurant, Bruno was helping Nicholas into the waiting SUV. Emma's friend's mother had finally managed to call. The police had found the overturned car. There had been no body in it initially. The snow fell like the sky itself was breaking apart. What changed everything happened in the time it took to hear a child crying. Mia had walked only 2 blocks from the restaurant, keeping her head down against the wind, when she heard it, not a sound exactly, but the absence of all other sound, as if the world had paused to listen. A small voice, young, terrified, coming from somewhere ahead in the darkness. She ran toward it. The car was upside down in the parking lot of a closed automotive shop, 3 blocks from Castellano's. The metal was still settling, still creaking. The windows had shattered from the impact, and through the wind-driven snow, Mia could see a small figure trapped beneath the roof line, pinned by the angle of the vehicle, her pink coat bright against the white world. Mia didn't think. Thinking was a luxury. She dropped to her knees in the snow, her uniform soaking through instantly, the cold so absolute it felt like being stabbed. She could see the child's face now, a girl, maybe 6, with dark curls and eyes that held the entire universe of a child's terror. "It's okay," Mia said, though her teeth were already chattering. "I'm here. You're not alone." She braced her shoulder against the undercarriage of the car and pushed. Nothing. She adjusted her position, dug her feet into the snow, and pulled this time, using her whole body, the metal scraping skin from her palms. Blood mixed with snow. She didn't feel it. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, baby." The car shifted. 6 inches. She pulled again, and the child slid free, tumbling into Mia's arms, sobbing and shaking. Mia wrapped her in her own coat, held her against her chest where she could feel the child's heart hammering like a trapped bird, and sat in the freezing parking lot, just holding her, whispering that she was safe now, that everything would be okay, words that were lies but necessary lies. 23 minutes passed. Then headlights cut through the blizzard, and tires screamed to a halt, and a man exploded from a black SUV like he was made of pure rage and terror combined. Nicholas Castellano had never been afraid before. Fear was something other people experienced. But he saw his daughter, alive, wrapped in a stranger's arms, and something broke open in his chest that he thought was sealed away decades ago. He saw the blood on the stranger's hands. He saw her shaking so hard she could barely hold his daughter. He saw her waitress uniform soaked through, her lips turning blue, her eyes filled with something he recognized because he'd worn it himself in another lifetime, the knowledge of what it meant to have nothing. "You saved her," he said, and his voice broke in a way that made Bruno look away. Mia just nodded, teeth chattering too hard to speak. She was handing Emma to him, stepping back, her job done, the way invisible women do, complete the task, ask for nothing, disappear. Nicholas tried to give her money. $10,000 in cash, pressed into her bleeding hands. "No," Mia whispered. "I don't want, she was alone." She was already walking away into the blizzard, already becoming invisible again, already erasing herself from this moment. Nicholas watched her go, and Bruno nudged him gently because their boss was crying, actually crying, something none of them had seen since the boss's wife died 12 years ago. "Get her name," Nicholas said. "Find out everything about her." "Everything." Bruno nodded, but he already knew what his boss didn't yet, that this woman had just entered their world in a way that would change all of them. 3 blocks away, in a truck parked on an empty street, Douglas Hale sat watching Mia's apartment building. The snow had piled up around his tires, and the engine was running, heat blasting, but he wasn't cold. He was burning. He'd followed her from the restaurant, the same way he'd been following her for 8 months, and he'd seen her with that man in the parking lot. He'd seen her hands on another man's child. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel Dawson, "How's your girl doing with her new boyfriend?" Douglas didn't respond. He just drank from his flask and watched Mia's window and made a decision that would destroy everything. At the same hour, in a penthouse apartment across the city, Rachel Dawson hung up her phone and smiled. Another call made, another restaurant warned about Mia's instability, another door closing. She swirled wine in a crystal glass, Riedel, $200 a stem, and looked at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Las Vegas. She was beautiful. She was rich. She was used to getting what she wanted. Douglas Hale would be easy. The waitress would be easier. She just needed a little time. The blizzard howled like a wounded animal as Douglas Hale's truck idled 3 blocks from Mia's apartment, exhaust ghosting into the frozen air. Inside, the heater ran full blast, but Douglas burned from something deeper, a rage that alcohol could not extinguish. He'd followed Mia from the restaurant. He'd seen her with that man. He'd seen her hands on another man's child. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel Dawson, "How's your girl doing with her new boyfriend?" Douglas didn't respond. He just drank from his flask and watched Mia's window and made a decision that would destroy everything. For days later, at 3:15 in the afternoon, the blizzard was still raging when Mia pushed through the doors of Westside Elementary School. Marcus and Lily ran toward her, their backpacks bouncing, their faces flushed from cold and the joy of being released back into their mother's arms. The snow fell so thick that visibility dropped to barely 30 feet. Other parents hurried past, heads down, eager to escape into their warm cars. Mia knelt to button Lily's coat tighter, to smooth Marcus's wind-tangled hair, to breathe in the clean scent of their shampoo. These moments, these small, ordinary moments, were everything. That's when she saw him. Douglas stepped out from behind the concrete column near the parking lot, his coat hanging open, his eyes red from drinking. The snow swirled around him like he was emerging from a nightmare. Mia's entire body went rigid. Her hands found both children's shoulders, pulling them slightly behind her. "Stay behind me," she whispered. Douglas walked toward them with the deliberate slowness of a man who owned the world. He wore a smile that had nothing to do with joy. His breath, when he reached her, reeked of whiskey and rage. "You think some rich boyfriend is gonna save you?" His voice was a growl, a threat wrapped in casual cruelty. "I own this city, Mia. I own you." "No," she said. Her voice trembled but didn't break. "You don't own me anymore." Douglas's hand shot out, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise the skin beneath her coat sleeve. His fingers dug in like a vice. Pain shot through her shoulder. Mia gasped, and something ancient and protective ignited inside her chest. Marcus, her 8-year-old, her brave boy who had watched too many terrible things, pulled at Douglas's jacket. "Let go of my mommy." Douglas shoved him. The child flew backward into the snow like a ragdoll, landing hard on his back. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. For a moment he lay there, gasping, his eyes wide with shock. Lily screamed, a sound like glass shattering, and Mia did something that surprised even herself. She did not cower. Mia stepped directly between Douglas and her children, her body becoming a wall, a shield, a weapon. Her voice came out steady and cold and absolutely certain, "Touch them again and I will kill you myself." She meant every word. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady as stone. "I will end you." Douglas laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. But something flickered across his face, a moment of genuine uncertainty. Something in her eyes, in her stance, in the absolute sincerity of her threat, made him step backward. The snow crunched under his boots. "You've got 3 days before you're on the street," he said, his voice dropping lower, more vicious. "And your new friend? I'm gonna make sure he knows what a worthless whore you are. He's gonna know exactly what you are before I'm done with you." He turned and walked back to his truck, his shoulders hunched against the wind. 3 days, Mia. He drove away into the blizzard. Mia fell to her knees in the snow. Marcus scrambled toward her, crying, and Lily wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck. The three of them sat there in the parking lot as snow accumulated around them, as the world went white and cold and silent, and Mia held her children like she could fuse them together into something unbreakable. At that same hour, across the city in the Four Seasons ballroom, Rachel Dawson adjusted her pearl necklace and smiled at the assembled women around the charity luncheon table. These were the architects of Las Vegas society, wealthy wives and divorcees and socialites who controlled the narrative of who mattered and who didn't. Rachel had cultivated these relationships for 7 years with the precision of an artist. They trusted her. They believed her. She stood, tapping her crystal water glass with a silver spoon. The sound rang like a bell through the ballroom. Conversation stopped. Every face turned toward her. "I need to share something deeply troubling," Rachel said, her voice trembling with what appeared to be genuine concern. "One of our city's most respected establishments has been harboring a criminal. A woman, a waitress named Mia Hartley, has been systematically stealing from Castellanos, falsifying receipts, and worst of all, she's been targeting vulnerable men through manipulation and seduction." Rachel pulled out her tablet, showing photographs. "These are receipts she forged. These are bank transfers she falsified. This woman is a predator." The photographs were perfect. Expertly doctored. Mia's face circled and labeled like an animal in a scientific study. The women gasped. Head shook. Whispers rippled through the room like waves. Rachel continued, her eyes glistening with false tears, "I felt it was my duty to warn you. She may attempt to approach your husbands, your sons. She's dangerous. She's manipulative. She will ruin you if you let her." She sat down, placing her hand on her chest as if the burden of truth-telling had exhausted her. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, Mia stood in the employee break room at Castellano's Italian restaurant, holding her final paycheck, $147, and watching her manager avoid her eyes. The manager, a kind man named Vincent who had employed her for 3 years, couldn't even look at her face. "Mia, I'm so sorry," Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We received a letter from Rachel Dawson's lawyer. If we keep you employed, we face a lawsuit for aiding and abetting fraud. The receipts, He stopped. "I know you. I know you wouldn't steal. But I have a family. I have a mortgage. I can't." "It's okay," Mia said. Her voice was made of ash. "I understand." The check crumpled in her fist. $147. She had $34 in her wallet at home. $181 total. The eviction notice demanded $85,000 in 7 days. Marcus and Lily needed to eat. The electric bill was due. The water bill. The phone bill so she could receive calls about job interviews that would never come. That night at 11 o'clock, Mia sat on the cold floor of her studio apartment and wrote a letter. The blizzard had intensified. Snow piled against the windows like the world was being buried. The heater had stopped working 3 days ago, and Mia couldn't afford the repairman's fee. Her breath misted in the frigid air. She wore 2 sweaters, 3 pairs of socks, and still she shivered. The worn prayer card her mother had given her before the cancer took her sat on the table, soft from years of handling, the words barely legible, "One hand reached out can change a life." Marcus and Lily slept in the bedroom, curled together under every blanket they owned. Mia could hear their breathing through the thin walls. She picked up her pen and began to write. Dear Nicholas, you showed me kindness when I deserved none. You saw me as human when the world saw me as nothing. I'm leaving because I won't let Douglas hurt you or Emma. You saved my heart. Now I'm saving yours by disappearing. I love you. I know I have no right to say it, but I do. Goodbye. Mia. She folded the letter carefully. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the paper. She thought about the coat hanging by the door. She thought about walking into the blizzard and simply not coming back. She thought about how much easier everything would be if she was simply gone. Douglas wouldn't have a target. Nicholas wouldn't have a complication. Emma would have a hero, not a broken woman who brought danger and chaos. She picked up her coat. Then, from the bedroom, a small voice, cracked with sleep and fear, "Mama." Lily. Her 4-year-old. Her smallest heart calling out in the darkness. Mia put the coat down. She walked into the bedroom and climbed into bed with her children, pulling their small bodies against her, and whispered, "Mama's here. Mama's here. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to be okay." She didn't believe it. But she said it anyway. For them, she would say it 10,000 times. What Mia didn't know was that she had dropped the goodbye letter on her way out of the restaurant. Bruno found it, tucked under a table near where she'd worked her final shift. He brought it to Nicholas at midnight, the paper still damp with snow. Nicholas read the letter standing in his office, every line, every word. The paper shook in his hands. His jaw clenched tighter with each sentence. By the time he finished, his entire body was rigid with a rage so profound it was almost silent. He crumpled the letter. Then he smoothed it out carefully because it was from her. Then he read it again. "Bruno," he said, his voice level and cold as winter stone. "Get the men. All of them. Now." At 4:47 in the morning, 12 men in black moved like ghosts through the blizzard. They wore tactical vests. They moved with military precision. Nicholas Castellano led them personally. When they kicked in Douglas Hale's apartment door, he was drunk and half asleep, fumbling for a weapon he would never reach. Nicholas didn't touch him. Didn't need to. Bruno and Nino handled it with surgical precision, cuffing him, reading him his rights, because this was about something bigger than violence. This was about systematic destruction. "Too quick," Nicholas said, his voice like ice wrapped around steel. "Too easy. Too merciful." At exactly 5 o'clock in the morning, federal agents, whom Nicholas had been feeding evidence to for 3 weeks, documentation of Douglas Hale's involvement in organized racketeering, assault, witness intimidation, corruption, and threats, descended on the apartment with a warrant signed by a federal judge. Douglas Hale was dragged out in handcuffs while news cameras rolled, every channel broadcasting the arrest live. He begged. He collapsed. He trembled like a cornered animal backed into a final corner. "Please, please, I'll disappear. I'll leave her alone, please." Nicholas leaned close to him, close enough that only Douglas could hear. 40 years. Federal prison. No parole. No mercy. You'll rot knowing she's free and you're nothing. Douglas screamed as they loaded him into the FBI van. His voice echoed through the parking lot and disappeared into the blizzard like it had never existed at all. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Rachel Dawson woke to FBI agents at her penthouse door. The warrant was already in their hands. The charges were already filed: fraud, conspiracy, defamation, falsification of documents. Evidence that Nicholas's people had compiled showed everything: the forged receipts, the fabricated photographs, the letter from her lawyer threatening Vincent, the coordinated campaign to destroy Mia's reputation and livelihood. Her wealthy husband, standing in the bedroom doorway in his silk pajamas, finally understood exactly who he had married. He filed for divorce on camera, his lawyer announcing it to the assembled press outside their building. Rachel's voice rose to a scream: "Do you know who I am?" An FBI agent, a woman with tired eyes and a badge, responded, "Yeah. You're nobody now." Within 1 hour, every social platform carried the story. 500,000 people had seen the footage. By morning, the number had doubled. By the end of the week, every news outlet in the country had run it: wealthy woman's conspiracy exposed, Mafia boss dismantles rivals through law enforcement, innocent woman cleared. Rachel Dawson's name became synonymous with cruelty. Her face appeared on every screen as a cautionary tale. Her fortune was frozen by legal action. Her reputation was ash. Douglas Hale received a 40-year federal sentence with no possibility of parole. He was led out at dawn, handcuffs rattling, his dignity gone. Public arrest. Total ruin. Rachel Dawson faced conspiracy and fraud charges that carried a minimum 12-year sentence. She lost everything in the divorce settlement. She became a social pariah, untouchable, invisible, the very thing she had tried to make Mia. Systematic destruction complete. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. The snow fell in thick, suffocating sheets across Las Vegas, reducing the world to white chaos and silence. Mia Hartley walked through the blizzard with her 2 children's hands gripped tight in hers, Marcus, age 7, and Lily, age 5, their small bodies pressed against her sides as the wind tore through the empty streets like a blade wrapped in ice. Her backpack held everything they owned now. Everything. A change of clothes. $200 she had borrowed from a coworker. A goodbye letter addressed to Nicholas Castellano that she had written at 3 in the morning, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She had not slept. She had not eaten. She had just written the truth, that she loved him, that she could never repay what he had done, that she had to disappear before Douglas found them, before her presence in his life became a death sentence for the man who had already given her everything. The letter was no longer in her pocket. Behind her, moving through the storm like a ghost, Nicholas Castellano walked alone. 6'2". Built like a man who had spent his entire life fighting for survival. His cashmere coat, the color of ash, worth more than Mia's annual salary, hung open over a tailored black suit. Snow clung to his dark hair and the sharp line of his jaw. His eyes burned with something that looked like pain. He held her prayer card in one hand and her goodbye letter in the other. "Mia!" His voice cut through the howling wind, desperate and raw in a way that made the sound of it break something open inside her chest. She stopped walking. The children felt her freezing, gripping her hands tighter. She turned toward him, and the moment she saw his face, the way he looked at her with the letter crumpled in his fist, her vision blurred with tears that froze against her skin. "You were leaving," Nicholas said, closing the distance between them. Snow swirled around his ankles. His breathing was heavy, visible in white clouds. "Without saying goodbye to my face. Without letting me," his voice cracked. "Without letting me save you." Mia's whole body was trembling. "I had to protect you. Douglas would have hurt Emma if he found out if he knew I was with you. I couldn't bring that into your life. I couldn't." "Douglas is in federal custody," Nicholas interrupted, his voice cutting through her words like a knife through silk. 40-year sentence. Organized racketeering. Assault. Stalking with intent. He's on every news channel right now, Mia. They're leading him out in handcuffs. And Rachel Dawson," he stepped closer. "She's being arrested for fraud, conspiracy, defamation. 12 years minimum. They're done. Both of them. They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt our daughter. The world tilted. Mia's legs gave out completely. She sank into the snow, Marcus and Lily falling with her, their small bodies wrapping around her like they could hold her together. And then she broke. Huge, gasping sobs erupted from somewhere so deep inside her that she didn't recognize the sound of her own voice. Years of terror, of counting pennies, of running, of believing that safety was something other people got to have, of holding her children and wondering if they would eat tomorrow, all of it poured out of her in waves that shook her entire body. Nicholas knelt beside her without hesitation. His expensive suit was soaked through immediately. The cold bit into his skin. He didn't care. He pulled Mia against his chest, his arms wrapping around her and the children, holding them like he could shield them from the entire world with his own body. "You wrote that you loved me," Nicholas said against her hair, his voice muffled and breaking. "In the letter. Did you mean it?" Mia nodded, couldn't speak, could only sob. "I fell in love with you," he continued, "the moment I saw you in that parking lot with my daughter in your arms. You were bleeding. You were terrified. And the first thing you did was check on Emma. You're not nothing, Mia. You're everything. You're the bravest person I've ever known." The snow fell heavier. The wind screamed. And in the middle of the blizzard, in the middle of Las Vegas, a powerful man held a broken woman and two small children like they were the most precious things in existence. Nicholas reached into his coat pocket with one hand, keeping the other arm around Mia. He pulled out the worn prayer card, the one she had carried through years of hardship, crumpled and faded and falling apart at the edges. He held it so she could see it. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Mia nodded, her face buried against his shoulder. Nicholas read it aloud, his voice steady now, each word weighted with meaning. One hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. He tilted her face up so she had to look at him. Snow melted on his cheekbones. His eyes were glistening, and for the first time in 15 years of ruling his empire, Nicholas Castellano was crying in front of someone besides himself. "You reached out for Emma," he said. "You saved my daughter without knowing who she was. Without expecting anything in return. Now let me reach out for you. Let me save you. Let me keep you safe. Please." Marcus tugged on Mia's sleeve. "Mommy, we're cold." "I know, baby," she whispered. "I know." "Come with me," Nicholas said, standing and extending his hand to help her up. "My home. It's warm. It's safe. Your children can sleep in beds that aren't going to be repossessed. You can eat without calculating if you can afford it. You can breathe, Mia. For the first time in years, you can actually breathe." She took his hand. The mansion was nothing like Mia had imagined. It was warm, yes, heated floors and fireplaces and light pouring through enormous windows, but it was also beautiful in a way that made her throat close. Not cold. Not empty. Family photographs lined the hallway. Drawings taped to the kitchen refrigerator. A child's toy scattered across the living room floor where Emma must have been playing before she knew her angel was coming home. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her dark hair tangled from sleep. She saw Mia and her face transformed completely. "You're the angel lady," Emma said, running toward her without hesitation. She collided with Mia at full speed, wrapping her small arms around Mia's legs. "You saved me in the parking lot. Daddy said you had my blood all over your hands but you didn't let go." Mia sank to her knees, pulling Emma against her. The child smelled like sleep and innocence. "Hi, sweetheart. Hi, baby. Are you staying?" Emma asked, pulling back just enough to look at her. "Please stay. Everyone else leaves. I do not want you to leave." Mia looked at Nicholas, standing in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed, waiting, giving her the choice. Letting her decide if this was real or if it was another dream she would wake up from in poverty and terror. "Yeah," Mia whispered, her voice breaking on the word. Yeah, I'm staying. 6 months later, the world looked completely different. Mia stood in the offices of the Castellano Foundation for Women in Crisis, a non-profit that Nicholas had created in her name. She wore a tailored grey suit, her first new clothes in 3 years, and her hands no longer shook when she signed paperwork. Around her, the walls displayed photographs of women like her. Women who had escaped. Women who had been saved. Women who had learned that they were not nothing. They were everything. Her children played in the safe room downstairs, supervised by staff. Marcus and Lily called Nicholas Uncle Nick now, though everyone knew it was only a matter of time before Mia would ask him to be their father in the way that actually mattered. In the candlelit booth at the back of Castellano's restaurant, the same booth where Mia had first served him, counting $34 in crumpled bills while his men conducted business, Nicholas sat across from her with the evening light casting gold across the table between them. "Do you remember the first time you served us?" he asked. "You didn't tip," Mia said, smiling for the first time in a way that didn't hurt. "I thought you were the rudest man I'd ever met." "I didn't know you yet," Nicholas said. He reached across the table and took her hands. "I didn't know that you would bleed for my daughter. I didn't know that you would teach me that strength isn't about power. It's about standing when you have every reason to fall. It's about reaching out when it costs you everything." Mia touched his face. Her palm was warm against his skin now, no longer calloused from desperation, no longer trembling with fear. "You saw me when I was invisible," she said softly. "You fought for me when no one else would. You gave me back my life." Douglas Hale served his 40-year federal sentence in a maximum security prison in Nevada, his name becoming synonymous with predator, his appeals denied year after year. Rachel Dawson was convicted on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, defamation. She received a 12-year sentence and lost everything in the divorce settlement: her fortune, her social standing, her identity. She became the very thing she had tried to make Mia: a nobody. Invisible. Forgotten. The prayer card now hung in a frame in Mia's office at the foundation, preserved behind glass like the sacred thing it was. Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life. A single mother with $34 and a bleeding heart saved a child in a blizzard, not knowing that child's father would save her in return. She thought she was nobody. He showed her she was everything. And in showing her, he discovered that the most powerful force in the world isn't violence or money or the empire you built with fear. It's the courage to reach out when it costs you everything. And the grace to accept help when you need it most. If this story moved your heart, drop a like right now and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel because we have more stories coming tomorrow that will break you open and put you back together. Comment below, have you ever had someone reach out at exactly the right moment? Your story matters. We want to hear it. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you in the next video. Goodbye.